Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome all. I am Tim Dickerson, a member of our Board of Trustees, and I'm glad to welcome each and every one of you here to our Sunday services this morning at the UU Church of Columbia. We are a congregation striving to embody courageous love, radical welcome, and deep connection, and we're so glad you are here, bringing all that you are and all that you love and your deepest commitments to a more just world for all. Welcome. We are glad to be offering a live stream of our service, and we would like to extend an additional welcome to those of you joining us online. We strive to make our worship accessible, and those of you at home or using your screen readers in person can find an accessible order of service with hymn lyrics included on our homepage, uucomo.org. If you're on Zoom, we have an automated captioning turned on, and we will provide spoken descriptions and images and videos shown on the screen. Please let Reverend Molly know if you have other access needs. We can meet with an email to minister@uucomo.org. For those of you with us in person, we invite you to attend carefully to the safety of all by leaving plenty of space, wearing your mask, and ensuring you are greeting one another in a way that is comfortable for both parties. We'd like to particularly welcome any visitors among us this morning and invite you to find our guest book after the services in the entry if you have not done so already, or in the chat if you're using us online. We'd love to stay in touch with you about your going-ons and our going-ons. Children and babies are always welcome in worship, and we also have a lively children's art religious education program and nursery care for your younger ones. All nursery caregivers and RE teachers are masked and vaccinated. Our children will be invited to their classes after the centering moment and embodied prayer. If you have a joy or sorrow you'd like spoken aloud during the service, you can write them on a yellow slip over here to be included in our time of prayer. If you're online, please include your joys or sorrows in the chat now so that they can be relayed to our worship leaders in the time of prayer. This morning service is next in our Theologies for This Moment series, and we'll be exploring disability theology. Our musical selections are shared with permission by disabled artists, and we've included special musical note in our order of service so you can learn more about the artist. Let's settle in now with our prelude from Adrian Antoine. He is pictured on the screen, an Asian American man with brown skin, black hair, and a limb difference of the bow arm, playing with great feeling. He also shows on the screen a cartoon of many different faces showing different emotions, a photo of the composer and a photo of the composer's pet pug. The piece is La Capricci by, I know I did not get that right, I apologize, by Edward Algar, and Anna Tawan invites us to listen for the capriciousness of the music and all the emotional changes and shifts.
Our opening words this morning are from Enfleshed. Spirit of life and love and liberation, mother and lover, and conspirator and friend, tender of possibility and dream, you have called us together in this time, in this place, and so here we are, full of wisdom and wondering, full of hope and fear, weariness and longing, passion and pain. Unleash a wild power in us. We pray. Deepen our connection with you and with each other. Deepen our capacity to hear the voices of those too often silenced, to honor the presence of those too often erased, to center the wisdoms of those too often pushed to the margins, that we might bear witness to the complex truths of our holy, holy lives and the complex needs of this beautiful world. We remember those who have brought us to this place, who have labored with you, who have labored for us to make a way out of no way, dreaming dreams, envisioning visions, both ancient and new. The communion of prophets, saints and teachers, queer lovers, and freedom fighters and fugitive dreamers. Our ancestors, the great cloud of witnesses, those who whisper their wisdom in stories, songs, and poems, those who gave birth to movements and moments of liberation, of healing, of justice, of love. We remember and honor the legacies of resistance to evil, injustice, and oppression that had enabled our being and invited our becoming. We remember and honor the legacies of faith in beauty, joy, and gladness that have enabled our being and invited our becoming. So, beloveds, bring your beautiful, messy, aching, wondrous selves. Bring your laughter, bring your rage, bring your tears, bring your fears. Bring the insight that only you can offer. Bring the imagination that bursts open old wineskins. Divinity dwells in our flesh and our bones.
We are singing together. Are you ready for this? Please turn your hymnals to 347. If you'd like to stand, you may, if you're able. Gather the Spirit, harvest the power, our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour, our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in all compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seeds for the soul in our laden store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in all compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather to sympathy now and then, gather in all compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. It's so much more fun when you're singing with me.
We now light our chalice, the symbol of our faith in the community that holds us and the bright flame of the human spirit that unites us. Will you join me in our weekly words of affirmation printed in your order of service? Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together
Good morning. So I am a sometimes practitioner of yoga. And one of the things I appreciate most about yoga is the opportunity to get to know my body at a very intimate level, to see what it is capable of, its unique strengths and abilities, and to see what it can achieve through effort and determination, the way it can grow in ability. But also getting to know where its limits are, to see what it cannot do. Maybe because of genetics, the history of my body, or aging. That knowing this is part of knowing my body and myself too. And I usually do yoga with my spouse. And I've noticed that those areas of strengths and limitations are totally different between the two of us. There are things he can do that I cannot do, and things that I can do that he can't. And because we do yoga in a meditative state, focused on our breath, I find I'm able to experience this knowing with gentleness and curiosity. How fascinating that his body works this way and my body works a different way. What affection I have for these bodies in all of their strengths and vulnerabilities, in this story they tell of who we are. So, for our centering today, I want us to sink into that intimate relationship with our bodies, with gentleness and affection. All these millions of bits and pieces, and feel how they come together to form a body that will be our companion through this life and carry us through this world, and how truly miraculous that is. Bring your attention to any part of your body that you want to, and just take a moment to revel in its shape, its function. It's just being. And then take a moment to appreciate those ordinary things your body can do that are actually truly extraordinary. The thousands of processes that are happening every day to allow us to live and experience this world in an infinite variety of ways. And then think of some unique strength or ability your body has, even if it is something very small and insignificant, something you can do. And take a moment to just delight in it. And then think of those things that haven't come easily to you, but that you and your body have found a way to accomplish. How it may not have been a path getting there that looked like other people's path. How the way you do it may be different than the way others do it, but how you have found a way to make it work. And sit with that sense of partnership and accomplishment with your body. And then take a moment to find where the limits of your body's abilities are. Can you let go of positivity culture and wellness culture that tells you you can accomplish anything, that it is all under your control? Can you sit with your body in acceptance of what it cannot do? How have these limits shaped you? And what have they taught you about yourself? Let us acknowledge that our bodies sometimes frustrate us, how we sometimes feel let down by them, how sometimes they can hurt. Like any long-term relationship, it cannot always be a honeymoon. Our relationships with our bodies are complicated and nuanced, and sometimes very hard. But it is a forever unfolding and changing relationship. And through this, feel how deeply we are able to know our bodies, how deeply we are able to know ourselves, how deeply we are able to know this world and this life, full of possibilities and impossibilities and everything in between. Let us hold in our hearts each body in deepest affection.
Now, during a moment of contemplative music, I invite you into our weekly embodied ritual of stones and water. For those of you tuning in at home, I'd like to invite you into a moment of quiet contemplation, imagining the burdens of your heart lifted and held by our community as you listen to the music and continue to be present to your body and your life and all that it holds with compassion. For those of you with us in the room, you are welcome to come forward and take a stone representing any of the hopes and fears that you bring with you this morning. Drop the stone into the water, which represents the embrace of our community, and be held. Those of you who wish to have your joy or sorrow spoken aloud may write it on the yellow slip at the table in the west side of the sanctuary and put it in the basket. And I have the chat pulled up here on the chancel to be able to also receive your joys and sorrows submitted online in real time. I now invite you into this time of contemplation, sharing the joys and sorrows, stones of our community. We're now going to invite our children to find their Sunday school teachers in the back of the room and head on out to your classes. And adults, you are welcome now to join in singing them out.
Live in joy, go in peace. Hold all thy love as we part. Live in joy, go in peace. Hold all thy love in your heart.
Will you please join me in a short moment of silence to center our hearts in preparation for receiving and holding together the joys and sorrows, prayers of our community. I want to start with some joys from our children today. And I want to invite you into an embodied response if you wish. We do spirit fingers for joys and hands over our heart for sorrows or concerns. Let's join in joy with Indy, who shares that when they go to the pool, it makes them feel happy. And a joy with Sydney, who writes, I love this community and I care about Mother Earth. And with the Burling family, we have joyous, happy 12th birthday wishes to Trinity. We join our hearts with Dottie Matthews and Unitarian Universalist ministers and congregants across the country who share concern for a dear colleague, Reverend Rob Eller Isaacs, who's dealing with a very serious cancer diagnosis. We hold him in love. We join our hearts with Gina Scott in sharing a prayer for Gina and Steve's son, Daniel, who had surgery this week to repair an ankle broken in 2 places during a hiking trip last week. Healing wishes to Daniel. We join our hearts with one among us who shares a prayer to be able to see someone's humanity despite their unwanted advances. We join our hearts with the Donaldsons in sharing their great sorrow in the loss of a huge old pin oak on Shepherd at Pheasant Run, demise from old age and a power line. Prayers for that beautiful tree. We join our hearts with Stacy, who shares 1 million sorrows for the loss of Austin, a beautiful 20-year-old young man in our community, the wider Columbia community, who was lost to an overdose. So much love to his moms, sisters, and brothers, and all whose lives he touched, and a prayer to everyone struggling with addiction. May they find peace. We join our hearts with Sarah, who shares joy for a spring celebration of Astara and parents coming to spend time with the family, children, and lovingly preparing together a lunch. Joy with you, Sarah. And we join our hearts with Mindy and many who share peace and strength to all in Ukraine. We also join our hearts with Mindy in celebrating that Cyrus is turning 12 tomorrow. Happy birthday. These things and so many more joys and sorrows, prayers and hopes and wishes that have not been spoken, but that are held tenderly in this room, we lift up together in the love that unites and sustains and transcends us. And Gretchen will lead us in concluding this time of prayer with a poem.
Our prayer this morning is a poem by Reverend Teresa Ninan Soto from their published collection, Spilling the Light. There are a lot of ways to stay alive. You can wear soft clothes and focus on brushing your teeth and hydrating. You can ask yourself what you need and not be mad when you don't have an answer. Only a shrug. You can breathe in, and then with care, you can also breathe out, taking the thing one single breath at a time. You can give yourself a chance. Remember, not only your mistakes, but also all the ways that you matter. From eyelash to shoelace, you matter. You matter when you are sad and the world is heavy, like wet laundry, dragging from your arms. You matter when you are angry and you use your teeth like welded prison bars to keep the words that might cause harm from escaping past your lips. There are many ways to stay alive. You can come hard-wrapped in several layers of foil, mashed into a plastic box with an ill-fitting lid, to a place where people say your name like it is good news. You can always fight your way toward freedom. I recommend that you decline the option of struggling by yourself. The point is to get your life. There was this wise ruler who said once that by ourselves, we each are unprotected, but two people together can face the worst: the failure, the heartbreak, the upending of the worlds we hold in our hearts, and the secret shame that we will shed, like the skin of a smooth snake, though it will take some time. And with three people, you being one of them, you may find that eventually all will be well. Let us now sing together once more the beloved hymn and prayer, number 123, Spirit of Life. You may rise or remain seated as you are most comfortable.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of just
You sound good, church. Disability theology is what is known as a contextual theology, which means that it is deeply rooted in a lived experience of the world. I'm incredibly grateful for the work of the Reverend Teresa Ninan Soto, who embodies, speaks, writes, lives, and leads in Unitarian Universalism in many ways, with disability theology being one of them. And I am particularly grateful to Pastor Ninan for agreeing to record a reflection for us from their perspective, presenting this contextual theology to our congregation. Teresa Ninan Soto will be pictured on the screen, a non-binary person with medium beige skin, short, darkened gray hair, chunky gray glasses, very hip, light purple lipstick and hoop earrings, and colorful clothing and background. Throughout their reflection, they share several images of a 3D line-drawn body, a spinning galaxy, and James Baldwin. It already sounds great, doesn't it? Here is a reflection with gratitude from Pastor Ninan.
Planets inside. What does it mean to be disabled? Hello, friends. My name is Reverend Teresa Ninan Soto. I go by Pastor Ninan. I'm really grateful to be here with you today to talk about some important things about disability. What I hope to show you today is where my theology comes from, why it is what it is, and how it connects to the Unitarian Universalism thoughts and practices that you already understand. Let's begin. You're accustomed to one way of talking about disability as the people's mechanics, the part of their body that doesn't work, the part of their body that hurts, the part of their body that's different. And as a religious and ethical community, that's one of the things that might touch your questions, but only in a really specific way. In other words, when you come to disability, one of your questions immediately can be, what will it take for this person to have a full and fair experience of our community? And that is one practical way that you can approach disability. But there is another that I want to talk to you about today, which is the perspective that lies in your heart. In his book, The Planet of the Blind, activist Stephen Kuzistu writes about the souls of disabled folks this way. First, you should know that they have planets inside just as you do. Rivers, acacia trees, windfall apples. They have remnants of the sea, permanence, pride. That man over there with the hip bone like a ladder splayed out, of no good use. Under his left arm is a red ember of votive work. He carries an invisible sword, something noble. And the woman who sells lottery tickets beside the Plaza Mayor is a ray opening. Light is her oval instrument, though she can't see. You should guess it. Guess these two people are wild of heart, lost and found. The soul is a crystal inside a crystal, a thing of carbon, and the electricity comes from a river, as yet unnamed. The root of everybody and everybody disabled belonging together can be thought of as beginning all the way back with William Ellery Channing. He said, "In ourselves are the elements of divinity." God then does not sustain a figurative resemblance to humankind. It is the resemblance of a parent to a child, the likeness of a kindred nature. With this thought, He affirms that not only are we kindred to the larger force in the world, the life inside us and between us to which we are accountable, but also then kindred to one another. It was ancestor, activist, poet, and teacher James Baldwin of the Harlem Renaissance who said, "If I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you don't see." So, as I invite you to additional and different perspectives, don't hear me saying you are bad and wrong. Rather, hear a wide open invitation. Y'all come to growth, to inclusion, to stronger, more beautiful community. And to talk about the difference between what we know and who we mean to be about everybody, and what we mean to do about having everybody with us, everybody together, leaving no one behind, and moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Sure. I need to tell you 2 stories. They're not that great. And I need you to know that if you were there, if you were part of the barrier, all is forgiven. All is repaired by our possibility. And we can do better next time. The first is this. I was at a church in a big city. I had to scoot down the road, ride a bus, ride a train to get to my church. It took me 2 hours, but it was worth it. A wonderful time. And then one Sunday morning, I heard there's going to be a bell concert after church in the afternoon. And I wanted to support my friends. I wanted to be part of the music program. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna go home, take out my little dog, make sure she has lunch, and I'll be back. So I did all that. And then when I got to church, there was a surprise. It wasn't a good one. In fact, the accessible entrance to the congregation was locked, even though it was about time for the concert. I had to sit in my scooter on the sidewalk and flag some people down that looked like they might be Unitarian Universalists. "Excuse me," I said. "Are you going in there?" I said. "Yes," they said. I wonder if they were wondering why I was minding their business. I said, "Can you tell them that I'm out here and that I'd like to come in?" Friends, I was a pledging member. I was an active member leader. And still, I had to say, "Can I please come in?" Another thing happened when I was a minister. I was leading at a church that had a fellowship hall that wasn't all that accessible. But I wanted to be with people after the service, so I did my thing and made it into the room. And someone came to speak to me. You know what she wanted me to know? That to make the fellowship hall accessible would be expensive. And wouldn't it just be better if people with disabilities or access issues just didn't worry about coming to coffee hour? I said, "I need you to know this. Unitarian Universalism is salvific. It's medicine for people's broken hearts." I said the cost isn't too high to make sure that everyone who's looking for us can join us, that we can save the lives that are waiting for our message. And she said, "Now you've convinced me. But friends, Actually, we should never ask anyone to justify their presence among us. We are all inherently kindred connected. And when we change our behaviors to make sure that people know that that's our default understanding, then we live into our possibility. Thank you for letting me share with you today. I love you and I believe in you, and I am grateful that you are thinking about how these pieces fit together. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be, and so may we live.
Our anthem this morning is a piece called Body and Being by the artist Molly Joyce, who composes and creates with disability as a creative source. The artist is not pictured in the video, which instead features an African-American dancer with brown skin and dark curly beard and hair, who is pictured close in, mostly from the waist up, manipulating one less mobile arm and hand with the other more mobile arm and hand. He moves slowly and solemnly beside a large tree in a sunny forest. We'll share now our anthem. This week, I was rereading a bit from eco-theologian Sally McFaig, who asked, wouldn't it change everything to think of the world as God's body? I was reading these words on the hard bathroom floor with a child's elbow digging into my rib, waiting to help another child with their hygiene, just immersed in some of the unmentioned parts of enfleshed life. Wouldn't it change everything to think of the world as God's body? The world is God's body, dimpled and cracked, fertile and barren, rugged and so soft. The world is God's body, belching undignified magma and emitting sulfurous fumes. The world is God's body, mountaintops amputated for coal within, deaf and covered in chattering bird song, blind and blossoming in a million shades of pink, disabled and worth everything. If the world is God's body, God hurts every day. And this is not tragedy, but fact, that every body suffers and finds pleasure, dances and aches, lives and dies. Sometime after my bathroom floor reading, I found myself in a soft chair for meditation, pondering the body of the holy and my own body, how it is trustworthy and traitorous, how I know every inch of flesh, every hair, but also have no idea what may be unfolding beneath my skin, how I can slow my breath and my heart, but have no control over a fluttering muscle in the lid of my eye, how every function could cease at any moment. If God has a body, does God have an unknown end lurking somewhere within? Cancer cells dividing too fast, neurons losing their spark. If the world is the body of the holy, then that is so powerful and so very vulnerable. We have learned a lot in these last 2 years about the vulnerability of the body, about our culture's anxiety of the body, about which bodies we treasure or trash, preserve or sacrifice, find worthy or ignore. In our collective pandemic reckoning with mortality and limitations, pain and suffering, isolation, we in this country have responded together as we often do, alternating denial and obsession, commodification and distraction, romanticization and rejection. And from the writing I've read, disabled Americans have been surprised by none of it. Even as they've mobilized to advocate for their safety and dignity, even as they've innovated vast networks of collective care and agency, the leading edge of what care could be, even as they have graciously shared their lifelong experiences of surviving isolation and limitation and lack of access with abled folks who were shocked by the challenges of living a circumscribed life in a world that had been built for their abled being. This morning, we continue our Theology for the Moment sermon series, exploring different frameworks that speak into this moment of global pandemic and the accelerating crisis of climate collapse. And this morning, we particularly learned from the wisdom of disability theology, which calls us toward living ever more profoundly, inclusively, fully, and joyfully into the limitations of our embodied existence and that of the earth. There are as many manifestations of disability theory and theology as there are ways of being a body in this world. Manifestations that particularly think of sensory disability or mobility disability, cognitive disability, other kinds of disablement. For today's service, I have been particularly moved by the work of disabled theologian Sharon Betcher and her book Spirit and the Politics of Disablement, which proposes that the pursuit of disability justice in our world requires at its core a theological shift, a worldview shift. Betcher writes, wherever life is lifted, lofted into the idealistic material sublime, there, because sorrow will not cease, because pain will not disappear, there, the body of the disabled will be made to carry the hostility we feel toward the contours and limits of our lives. Wherever life is lifted and lofted, the body of the disabled will be made to carry the hostility we feel toward the contours of our lives. Ultimately, she writes, the only way disability justice will enter this world we have created is when every person engages for themselves the deeply spiritual work of, quote, bearing the weight of our mortality, our finitude, and our pain as necessary realities of human experience and earthly truth. We must all teach our spirits to locate beauty and the value of life within that circumscription, within limits and pain, and outside of categories of usefulness and wellness. Until we can each and all do this, we will continue to other and project our anxieties upon disabled bodies. We will continue to create injustice conditions that normalize abled existence, that leave people outside the door waiting to come in, that ask people to justify their presence among us, that exclude and invisibilize disabled people and do violence to disabled lives of every kind. Hatred and exclusion of disability suggests a basic religious and cultural denial of the truth that to live will involve us all in suffering. Therefore, we must change our underpinnings. We must cease our denial. We must do our spiritual work, which Betcher describes as imagining and embodying a love of life which can cope with suffering, which will find beauty beyond idealism in the midst of life, in the body, in the body. Disabled theologians, theorists, artists, and everyday folks show the way toward our collective spiritual work, Betcher writes, simply by speaking an exquisitely poignant love for the world from a location that most of modernity has deemed insufferable and unlivable. Betcher writes, her leadership is dancing with her daughter in her wheelchair, joyfully laughing together, showing her poignant love for the world out in the streets where people witness her reality as insufferable or unlivable. Of course, this must not be spiritual labor for abled folks to ask of disabled people to be our vision of joy. We must not demand of disabled folks to be models or gurus for the abled or always happy or overcoming. Rather, it is Betcher's reminder that profound spiritual authority rests within those whose bodies and lives cannot pretend an absence of limit or challenge or even suffering. It is a reminder to all of us truly that it is our experience of our body's limits that teaches us the most about what it means to be alive in a beautiful and mortal world. And indeed, we have seen on a massive scale the crisis of ignored limits. The world is God's body, aching and fracked, bombed and melting, and we refused to live within the limited abilities of the earth, didn't we? And now we have made so much more suffering for our refusal to be mortal and small, our incapacity to rest and do less. And now we turn to a suffering world and we want to fix it because we cannot accept its suffering. But it was our refusal to be mortal and small that got us in the mess in the first place. And maybe we just need to stop and be with our bodies and the body of the earth and their limits for a while. Can you just stop and be with your body's limits for a while? Betcher writes that disability justice will require turning our fearful and therefore zealous energies away from the goal of eradicating suffering, a goal that works against the presence of the disabled, toward the spiritual wisdom of composing ourselves with equanimity before the shifting tectonics of a lifetime. She quotes Nietzsche, who wrote that to affirm life only in the hope of eradicating suffering is not to affirm this life. And she writes that this is actually the good news of disability theology for us all. The call to find beauty in what disability activist Leah Lakshmi Pepshna Samarishina calls adaptive joy. Adaptive joy exactly within the circumstances of limit and even suffering that inevitably enter every life. Because there will be so much of it. We are limited. And there is so much suffering. And there is also beauty and joy, not in transcending the muck of life, but right down in it. This good news of disability theology is decidedly not the call to overcome or make meaning of suffering, but rather the call to recognize and celebrate that meaning and beauty is already there in every single condition of life. Every single one, even and especially the ones society designates insufferable. Meaning and beauty are already there. We don't need to do anything to earn or make that beauty and meaning. It is always there. And perhaps more than any system we've studied so far, I think disability theology troubles Unitarian and Universalist historic theologies in interesting and generative ways. Our Unitarian side inherited a goal of moral perfectibility alongside Puritan capitalist assumptions of productivity as part of perfection. They believed in salvation by character and our responsibility to constantly do and be better. In fact, this belief that humanity could and should be perfected led to 20th century Unitarians dabbling in eugenics in our pursuit of progress onward and upward forever in the flesh, a terrible legacy. Disability theology troubles our historic theology in generative ways. Universalists believed in universal salvation without any requirement of puritanical self-improvement. But as they came to believe that the only hell was the one we created on this earth, they became obsessed with this worldly salvation. And this evolved to extremes when more Universalists became religious naturalists, agnostics, or atheists. Without God to do the universal saving, the human to-do list became very long. To use the words of Sharon Betcher again, our fearful and zealous energies were very much directed toward the goal of eradicating suffering. And she reminds us that is a goal that works against the presence of the disabled. And then we have Reverend Soto sitting outside the door saying, "Will you please let me in?" To these strands of our history and present, disability theology speaks a stark and very necessary truth. We cannot save each other. We must not try to save each other. Salvation involves a power imbalance anyways. But we must love each other. And in loving each other, include each other. Indeed, perhaps the only thing we can do is love each other through radical presence to what is, the freedom of mutual becoming and great networks of collective care. Betcher writes, "A religion that offers hope to the disabled would have much less to do with promising a future where tears will be no more than with promising a physical space where we, the disabled, can limp or wheel up to or lie at the table without encountering the alienating social gaze. Because all bodies present have metabolized their own mortality. That is, they have learned to hold the body humbly in mind. A religion that offers hope to the disabled is one that does its spiritual work." What does it mean for us as Unitarian Universalists to be reminded that we are not here to heal or save the world, but to love what is mortal? We are not here to heal or save the world, but to love what is mortal, and that will change things the right way. How would that shift our climate activism and help us hold our grief? How would that pave the way to disability justice and all kinds of justice by opening a radical and loving presence that insists upon inclusion because we are loving more broadly and getting everybody into the room without requiring our own vision of what wholeness or saving might be? How would ceasing to pursue the healing or salvation of the world allow us finally to love it into thriving that is richly varied and contextual and beautiful within the limits of life? Even and especially in our pursuit of a just and beloved community, we are not here to heal or save the world, but to love what is mortal. And that will make all the difference. Let us sing together again. Hymn number 318, "We Would Be One."
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of
A little hard to focus after that. Now is the time in our service when we join in the spiritual practice of generosity as one way that we care for each other and our community. Remembering that it is by sharing and supporting one another that we feel most human. This morning will be a faith to action collection for relief for the people of Ukraine. We will be contributing to the Emergency Response Fund of our Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, who works with grassroots partners on the ground to ensure our gifts support the most good possible. Our ushers will move through the sanctuary for those who wish to give in the offering plate. Online and text giving options are available in the order of service, both in person and online. In a moment, we will play our offertory song by Eliza Hall. He will be pictured on the screen, sitting at a piano on a TV set, singing with blue and yellow lights projected against the background and floor. She is a white woman with dark brown hair who moves to the beat as she plays and sings. But first, we will hear a word of introduction for our Faith to Action collection from Social Action team member Anna Chippendale.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to keep this really short and save the long story for another time. Basically, y'all, I just wanted to share a personal experience. We have all watched the horror of what's going on in Ukraine. We've seen the depravity of a leader in Russia who has once again decided that he wants power more than anything else, and he has ordered a massacre of proportions that is, I'm sure, as new to you as it is to me, because we're seeing it on television in Technicolor. For me, this scene has become extraordinarily personal. For the first time in my life, I now understand what my parents went through during exactly the same kind of situation. This time in 1944. I am from Estonia, one of the small countries in the Baltic, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, that right now has the blessing of being part of NATO and is feeling still fear, still trepidation, but has a sense of protection, unlike the Ukrainians. As I watched the people making that terrible decision, do I leave, do I stay? All of a sudden, the faces that I saw on the screen were no longer those of Ukrainians. They were the faces of my mother, my father, and all of the other Estonians who had that terrible, awful decision to make. Do I go? Do I stay? How do I make that decision? Whom do I protect? My parents were in their early 30s, and my mother had already experienced, in her childhood, she was born on the other side of Lake Peipsi that separated Estonia from Russia. She had already seen her family have to escape the Russian liberation once, when they took, after the revolution and the Russian Revolution. So she knew what was coming. 1944. It's interesting. 1941, you know, the drama in Estonia and the Baltics was different, though. We didn't just have one tyrant, one madman operating. We Estonians and the Baltics were fighting back and forth between Hitler and Stalin. What a choice. And in 1941, when I was born, the Germans pushed the Russians out. 3 years later, when my brother was born, the tables turned and the Russian occupation was coming. The Germans were pulling out. Hitler was on his way out also. My parents had buried their son. My brother died in July, and at the end of August, the beginning of September, they were faced with a decision. They knew. We were in Tartu, 100 miles from Tallinn, the capital, and they made the journey on German panzers to Tallinn, and from Tallinn, they got on the ship. And for the first time, I really understood as an adult, as a mother, as a grandmother, what it must be like for the Ukrainians. How do you decide? There's always the hope that we'll get back. For my parents, my mother knew there was no hope. This was it. We're leaving and we're going to stay gone. And we got on the ship, and I really, as a child, as a 3-year-old, I don't remember anything much except I understand I spent a lot of time in my father's lap and he was protecting me. We got on one of the last ships to leave Germany, and the ship, the small brigade, the warships were obviously bombed, torpedoed. My mother has recollections of the ship in front of her going down. She remembers our ship was also torpedoed. She pulled herself away. She said, "I could not bear to watch you and your father drown." We didn't. We made it. Luck was with me. Luck has always been with me my whole life. And I have a sense of incredible gratitude. Everybody, put yourself in the position of the Ukrainians right now. Imagine what you would do. Would you go? Would you stay? Whom would you protect? Are you going to leave your elderly parents? Are you going to protect your children? My father didn't want to go. My mother wasn't sure that he would even get on the ship because he loved Estonia, just like the Ukrainians. The love of country, love of family, love of the culture is profound. And of course, the Baltic countries have been kind of kickballed back and forth between the two. So as you give today, understand, think of yourselves and what you would need if you were in that position, and what decision you would make. Give as generously as you can, and let us, more than anything else, as we move forward, protect our democracy, protect our country, because we are seeing right now how frail our future could be. And again, I want to close with the words of a child. And the UNICEF has estimated that since the war began, one child has left Ukraine every second. Think about that. Think about all those children. And I leave you with a feeling of hope, of gratitude, of our incredible gratitude for all we have. When she, in that attic, as a young girl, kept a diary and was able to write, "I lie in bed at night after ending my prayers with the words of Ich danke dir für all das Gute, Liebe und Schöne. Thank you, God, for all that is good and dear and beautiful." Thank you.
We're leaving you now, though, with Eliza Hull performing Running Underwater, a song about disability, pride and acceptance.
If these legs will not move, it's just the way it's gonna be. Maybe I don't fit in with what you want me to be. Oh, this cookie cutter version, it's not doing me any favors. I don't wanna bring a few to the fire, but I gotta get louder. my bones for you to see. 'Cause I'm not getting far running underwater. 'Cause I'm not getting far running from you. I remember when I was 5, they told me to walk in a straight line. Growing up, I was always sucking in, trying to be pretty and just to fit in. I don't wanna bring a fuel to the fire, but I gotta get prouder. Gotta take the weight of me. Show my bones for you to see. 'Cause I'm not getting far running underwater. 'Cause I'm not getting far running from you.
Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the stakes are very high, and the path is never clear. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go in blessing and be a blessing to a world that needs our care. Let us share our benediction.
Now on